Hi, I'm Susanna Kay, professional organizer and productivity trainer. You may have heard the saying, you have 7 seconds to make a good first impression. In business, this is especially true. Your first impression sets the tone for the rest of your relationship. Improper or inappropriate etiquette sets a negative tone for your communication. This course is focused on etiquette standards within the United States of America. Each country and region has its own unique etiquette rules, so when communicating with someone from or in a different country, make sure to learn the etiquette basics for their area. In this course, I'll use both good and bad examples to explain using proper etiquette in your emails. Some standards to use when sending and receiving business text messages. Writing business letters that are properly formatted and appropriate for any business occasion, including what to say in thank you and sympathy cards. And creating phone messages that are clear and effective. By understanding the standards of etiquette, you can make an informed choice when to bend or break the rules based on your own situation. Are you ready? Let's begin. The subject, greeting, and signature of your email are what set the tone for your entire message. This is an example of an email sent to a new prospective client. What do you think could be improved within this subject line? In this example, the subject line "Great Opportunity" tells very little about what information's in the email. In order to help Jane find the email again later if she needs it, a better subject line may be "Free Class, How to Organize Your Home Office, March 6th. Sometimes you might want to reply to an email with information that either adds a new element to the conversation or is a completely separate topic. The reply subject automatically shows RE and the original subject. If your content no longer suits that subject, change it to reflect this new message, or send a new email instead. It's not helpful to the receiver to have a listing of emails like this, when not all of them are really talking about last Monday's meeting. For example, if one of these emails discussed a special report for Tuesday's meeting, it's polite to start a new email with the subject line "New Report for Tuesday's company meeting" instead. Let's take a look at the sample email again. Is the greeting line "Hey Jane" appropriate for an email to a brand new prospect? Most likely not. Some people take offense when they feel a business greeting is too familiar. Unless you know their preference, it's best to choose a more formal greeting. An example would be "Dear Mrs. Smith." With the formal option, you're less likely to start off your message with a bad feeling. For greetings in a group email, there are a few options depending on your situation. If your email is addressed to 2 or 3 people, you can choose to address them as a group, such as "Dear Analysis Team," or individually in order of their status in the organization, such as "Dear Mr. Brown, Mrs. Dean, and Ms. Davies," for a CEO, vice president, and team lead, respectively. As a side note, if you don't know how a female prefers to be addressed, Mrs. or Miss, use the generic Ms. title. Finally, looking back at our sample email again, let's talk about the signature line. A signature can vary widely depending on your position, as well as what information you want to get across. In the example, the only information provided is the sender's first name, phone number, and company name. This is a good start, but for a first email, the signature should contain much more information. In the first email of a thread, the signature should include your name, preferably both first and last name if you don't have a strong relationship, such as with a new prospect. You should always include your phone number in every signature, as well as your email address. Although your email address is also included in the From section of the email, some email servers replace known email addresses with the person's name, meaning either your address can't be seen or it takes a few extra steps to view it. Assume the recipient will copy and paste your signature into an address book, so include all important information. Some other information that you might want to include depending on your own business could be your job title, fax number, website address, office address, company description, social media links, or a brief announcement or promotional phrase. Be careful not to make your signature too long. The most important information, including your name and contact information, should be listed first. Here's an example of an appropriate email signature for a first email message. A few notes on signatures. If you're going to use an image as part of your signature, make sure to keep it small in size to avoid making the email too large. Also, if your name, phone number, or email address are only shown in the image, make sure to add the information below it in text as well. Many email servers are set to block images and some might not load properly. This ensures your information is not lost due to an image that won't display. Here's an example. Finally, when replying to an email, you should not use your full signature. This will make the reply thread too long to read easily. For replies, only list the basics, which are your name, phone number, and email address. This makes it easy for the recipient to find the most important information quickly without scrolling through a long thread of replies. These are some of the very basic elements of email etiquette with subject lines, greetings, and signatures. In the next movie, I talk about some of the basic etiquette standards in the body of your email. The body of your email is essential in order to convey your message clearly. This is an example of an email sent to a prospective client. What do you think could be improved within the body of this message? There are a few ways we can adjust this email for more effective communication. First, let's make it easier to read. In our fast-paced workdays, most people don't take the time to read every word of an email. They skim the email instead, quickly glancing over it for important information. The easier your email is to skim, the more likely you are to get a response and the more appreciative the receiver will be. A few ways to do this are: add bullet points for multiple pieces of information. Keep the email short. Reduce most filler words and conversations that are not pertinent. One friendly sentence is usually more than enough. Use extra spacing and paragraphs to separate key points or ideas. When referring to an item, such as a report or another person, make sure to add a little bit more description so the receiver doesn't have to try to remember what you're referring to or look up additional information. Using these techniques with our example, the message now looks like this. It's much easier to quickly see what information is important and the basic content of the email. You'll also notice that the message now starts with the most important information. This is the concept of writing the email backwards. We often have the tendency to begin an email with small talk, but to get your message across faster and clearer, put the most important information first. The first 1 or 2 sentences sometimes show as a preview in the receiver's inbox, so they can see those lines without even opening the email. Also, your call to action does not get lost in the email or put off until later. Finally, we changed the font from the original message. Using a common system sans serif font, such as Arial or Verdana, at a font size that's generally easy to read on a screen, such as 12-point, makes the message much easier to skim. Depending on the receiver's settings, they may only see your messages in plain text. This is a basic font without additional formatting, such as bold, italics, or special characters. Therefore, we use the dash instead of formatted bullets, so they'll be seen no matter what the receiver's settings are. This new message format will ensure you get your point across quickly and you respect the receiver's time. Anything you can do to save the other person time or energy is simply good etiquette in communication. How and when to follow up on an email is one of the questions I hear most often. Knowing the proper etiquette for following up will increase your probability of getting the response you need from the recipient. First, if you've not received a response to your original email, make sure your request was clear. Use the techniques in the email body movie to ensure your request is easy to read and at the top of your email. It's possible you did not receive a response simply due to poor communication. Following up on an email when there has been no response or when an expected deadline has been missed can be a touchy situation. Remember, no matter how frustrated you may be, always be polite. Use please and thank you and avoid any blaming or harsh language. You don't yet know the reason why there was no response. When you communicate through email, the implied urgency of your request is lower than if you had made a phone call. Therefore, you can expect a longer response time to your request. While some people may check their email several times throughout the day, others only check once per day at most. If your request can't wait 48 hours, you should follow up with a phone call instead. If your request is not urgent, allow at least 48 hours for an email response, though you'll most likely get a response in much less time. If you've not heard a response after 48 hours, it's acceptable to send a follow-up email. Depending on your relationship, this email could be more formal or casual, like this. In this example, you could either forward the original email with this message at the top, or copy the original request, including the date and timestamp under the message. It's helpful to summarize the call to action from the original request, so the person, who's most likely very busy, can quickly see what information you're waiting for. If your need is truly urgent, and you either can't call or need to escalate the request, you might want to consider including a person who oversees the project or oversees the person on the email. Be very cautious when doing this, though. Including a person's supervisor or a higher-level company member can cause hurt feelings and trouble for the recipient. Ask yourself first, if you truly need a response, if the recipient is really the right person to ask, if there's another way to get the answer, and what possible consequences could come from including a superior in the follow-up email. When you want to include someone in an email, you can CC them. CC stands for courtesy copy. When you send an email, the main recipient's address is listed in the To field. You can use the CC field to enter the address of anyone who you want to receive a copy of the email, but who you're not directing the email to, a courtesy copy. The person listed in the To field will see that the person in the CC field also received a copy. Sometimes you may want to send a copy of an email to a person without disclosing who else is copied. This is when you would use BCC, which stands for blind carbon copy. This should be used when you're sending to a group of email addresses, such as a mailing list, in order to protect the privacy of the group members. Use BCC carefully, because if any one of the recipients uses the Reply All feature, everyone could receive the reply. Also, be careful when using Reply All. This should only be used when the entire group needs to receive your response. If only the original sender needs your reply, choose the Reply option. Nothing is more frustrating than receiving a bunch of irrelevant replies to a group email that clutters your inbox. Use these guidelines as well when considering your own response time to emails. Many people expect a response between 24 to 48 hours from sending an email. Try to at least send a receipt confirmation within 24 hours if you can't completely reply to the message. Sometimes you may be in a situation where it's not possible to reply to an email within the preferred 24 hours. In these situations, an autoresponder or receipt acknowledgement may be a helpful tool. Knowing how to use these effectively is important to send the right message. Autoresponses are messages set to go out automatically as a reply to any new message that arrives. You can usually set this up within your email settings. One note about setting up your autoresponder. Choose the option to limit the reply to one per email address if it's available. This means if you receive more than one email from the same address, they won't get another auto-response. This is helpful especially if you receive messages from any email addresses that are not monitored, such as newsletters. An auto-response email should have most of the same elements as any other email. Here's an example. How could we make this better? In an auto-response email, it's helpful to list the actual dates you will be away from email. Instead of saying you will be away this week, a more appropriate description would be, I will be away from my email from Tuesday, April 4th through Tuesday, April 11th. This alleviates any confusion over when your absence began and when they can expect a response. If you don't plan to respond to emails within 24 hours of your return, it's also helpful to list the date when they can expect a response, such as, I will respond to my messages within 48 hours of my return, or I will respond to your email by the end of the day, Thursday, April 13th. Setting this expectation will help the sender determine when to follow up, and if they need a response sooner, they can ask someone else right away. Also, it's not appropriate in a business setting to list too much personal information within the auto response. Don't include where you will be unless it applies directly to your business. If you're planning to be at an industry conference, you may or may not want to include that information, but mentioning a vacation to the Bahamas does not convey professionalism. Finally, it's helpful to include a contact who can assist the sender while you're away. If you do mention someone who can help, make sure to include their email address and phone number, as well as their full name and title. This will provide context as to their relationship to you and the company, as well as make it easier to reach out if they do need assistance. Make sure to check with your colleague and let them know that you're sharing their contact information before you set up your auto-response. An adjusted auto-response email may look like this. There may be times when you receive an email that you won't be able to fully respond to within 24 hours. When this happens, it's polite to send a receipt acknowledgement and set the expectation of when you will be able to reply. For example, in response to a long email with several information requests, you may write a response like this. Within this reply, I noted what the original email was regarding, which shows that the issue is important to me. I also gave a time when she could expect to receive a response. This way, she knows when to follow up again if she's not received a response. Autoresponders and receipt acknowledgements, if used correctly, can be a useful communication tool. They convey a respect for the sender as well as set expectations for response. Email has changed the way we conduct business and communicate, but it's not appropriate for all situations. Here are a few more etiquette standards to be aware of when using email. To avoid accidentally sending an email before you've had a chance to review it, don't complete the to address until you're ready to send it. This will avoid accidentally hitting send before you're ready. Email is a great way to send non-urgent information and to keep an easily accessible record of a conversation. It's perfect for delegating tasks, sending files, communicating with a group, and sending written communication. Email is not the best form of communication for urgent information or requests. By sending a message through email, it's implied that the content is not extremely urgent and can be attended to within 24 to 48 hours in general. Email is also a very poor choice for information that requires a lot of explanation or a back-and-forth conversation. It's much faster and clearer to make a phone call rather than sending a long email or going back and forth with replies. Doing so can come across as inefficient and inconsiderate. Remember that email is a permanent written record. Never send information through email that you would not want possibly shared or used against you. An email is a record that can easily be shared and stored indefinitely. To avoid any legal, human resources, or other issues, make sure to never send anything confidential, damaging, embarrassing, or illegal through email. A face-to-face conversation is best for sensitive data. When sending attachments through email, be aware of the file size. Sending an unnecessarily large attachment causes slow loading for the receiver and may take up more storage space in their server than necessary. Stick to small files or link to a large file stored on a shared platform, such as Dropbox or Hightail. Also, don't send file types that could be perceived as a possible threat. Files with the extensions .exe, VBS, BAT, and .com are often used in virus attacks. Many spam filters and antivirus programs will block these attachments or send them to a spam folder, so the recipient may not even receive them. If you do need to send a file with one of these extensions, use a shared platform and let the recipient know the details of what that file is. Respect people's time and don't clutter their inbox. Make sure that the email you send is one the person wants to receive. Chain letters or spam are in very poor taste and can be seen as rude and even illegal. In an email, the reader can't hear vocal variety and tone. This means that your message can easily be misinterpreted if not worded carefully. Sarcasm has a strong chance of coming across as offensive, so avoid it. Before sending your email, reread it to consider all the ways it could be interpreted and adjust anything that could come across wrong. Also, never send an email when you're mad. If you write an email during high emotion, don't send it until after you've calmed down and can both reread and edit it. Once you hit send, it's most likely impossible to get it back. Each culture has their own etiquette standards. When sending an email outside of your region or country, make sure you understand their culture so you don't accidentally offend. And always, always, proofread and use spell check with your emails. Poor grammar and spelling comes across as unprofessional, and too often, autocorrect chooses the wrong word, and your message can take on a very different meaning than you intended. One last tip. Be careful when using all capital letters. In any electronic communications, this is interpreted as yelling. Restrict your acronyms such as LOL to your personal correspondence unless you've established a casual relationship with that contact. And avoid altogether the lesser-known acronyms where the recipient might need to look it up. Emoticons, which are the smiley faces and other images, can also be seen as unprofessional in a business setting. Email is a very useful tool, and it's essential in modern-day business. Knowing how to communicate with proper etiquette in virtual communications is essential to maintaining a good image and relationship. Unlike letters and even email, texting in business is a relatively new method of communication. Therefore, the standards for etiquette are still being determined. That being said, there are some basic etiquette standards that are agreed upon, and some guidelines for etiquette that are recommended. Text messaging is the most casual and familiar form of communication in business today. This is a new element, so not all contacts will feel comfortable using text messaging for business purposes. Always check with your contact first before using text as a form of business communication. Also, determine how casual your relationship is in order to decide how formal your text messages should be. Texting is intended for short messages. Some phones cut longer text messages into multiple parts, and they might not place them in the correct order, so a longer message may become confusing to the recipient. Anything longer than a few sentences is probably best sent by an email or conveyed with a phone call. In business texts, as with all written communication, grammar, spelling, and punctuation rules still apply. Although text messaging is a much less formal method of communication, in the business realm, it still requires the formality of complete sentences, accurate spelling, and correct grammar. Although abbreviations such as LOL and happy faces are more acceptable in text messages, make sure the relationship between yourself and the receiver is appropriate before using them. As with email, avoid any unusual abbreviations or emoticons. The recipient should be able to easily understand your message without researching the meaning. With text messages, unless your phone number is saved to the receiver's address book, they might not be able to identify who the text message is from. Make sure whenever you text someone for the first time, you identify yourself with your name and how you know them. This gives them a chance to save your information if they've not already, and it avoids the awkward text message reply of, "Who is this?" We type text messages so fast sometimes that it's easy to miss when we type the wrong word or when autocorrect guesses and replaces the wrong word. Proofreading is essential in texting. Always reread your text for accuracy and tone before sending. When sending a text message, be aware that it's common for people to have notifications that include the full text on their phone. This means that not only can the recipient see your text, but also anyone near them. Be careful not to send anything that could be embarrassing or confidential, especially in a work environment. A text message has a higher level of urgency than an email, but it's a more casual form of communication. You can usually expect a response to a text within 12 hours. Texting is a great way to pass on information or to ask a quick question. If your request is truly urgent, however, a phone call conveys the highest level of importance. Also, just like email, a text message is a permanent written record of your conversation, and it can easily be shared without your consent or even knowledge. Make sure never to send confidential, sensitive, or illegal information through a text message. Also, never send spam, unsolicited marketing or information through a text message. Depending on the settings in both your phone and the recipient's, the receiver may be able to see when you've read the text message. If you do receive and read a text message but can't fully reply immediately, make sure to send some form of acknowledgement, such as, "I received your message. I'm not able to fully respond right now, but I'll get back to you by the end of the day today." The basic etiquette for email applies to text messages as well. So I recommend you also refer to the Email Etiquette movie and apply the same rules to your text messages, including tone, legality, and abbreviations. Etiquette regarding following up on a text message is an area that's still being defined. In general, people expect a fast response to a text message, so try to reply within 12 hours maximum. How do you follow up with someone when you've not received a response? Let's look at some examples. How would you adjust this message? In this sample text, it's difficult to determine what message the sender is referring to. If you're following up on a text message that received no response, be specific about which message you're talking about. An example of a more specific text would be like this. Just like with email, always be polite when following up. Please and thank you are still appropriate in a text message. For a more casual relationship, the abbreviation TY can be used for thank you instead. Wait a full 12 hours to follow up on a text message that's not been responded to. If the matter is more urgent, follow up with a phone call rather than another text message. Operating any form of machinery or doing a task that requires focus can be dangerous while texting, so never distract yourself by texting. A new movement is gaining popularity regarding texting while driving or when you're unable to respond quickly. It's called the X text. By replying to the text with only the letter X, it signifies to the sender that you received the text, but you're unable to answer. They know that you'll answer when you're able to. Only send this text when you're in a safe place to do so, like stopped at a light or have a passenger send it for you. Once you're no longer driving, you can send a full response. Now, not everyone's aware of this new trend, so there may be times when you need to explain the X response. But as it gains popularity, more people will understand its meaning. Text messaging is a very fast and easy method of communication. When used correctly, it can increase efficiency, but when used poorly, it can reflect negatively on you. Make sure you know your relationship with the receiver, their preferences, and always err on the side of too formal rather than too casual. The business letter is one of the oldest forms of written communication we use in business today. This also means it has some of the most defined and structured standards for etiquette. When writing a business letter, the same rules of etiquette and caution as email apply. Since the business letter is a more formal mode of communication, it's the most essential of all forms to use proper format and formality. A letter sent through standard U.S. Postal Service mail conveys the highest level of formality, but a low level of time-based urgency. The perceived importance can be increased by using an alternate form of delivery, such as an overnight service, courier, or hand delivering. When using one of these expedited services, the level of time-based urgency is increased. A letter can also be seen as having a higher level of importance of content. For example, many legal issues are communicated with a formal letter. The formal business letter is a great tool for legal matters, sensitive topics that require documentation, and communication of important information. It's not a good form of communication for quick or conversational sharing of information. In those situations, an email or text is probably best. It's also not the best choice for items of a personal or emotionally sensitive nature. A phone call would be better used for conversations where vocal tone can help in conveying the right message. Never send any information in any form of written communication that's illegal in nature or that you would not want shared publicly or used against you. A letter is also a form of permanent written record. Once it's been sent, it can be copied, scanned, and shared easily and may never be retrieved. Just like any form of written communication, it's difficult to interpret the intended vocal tone in a letter. Make sure to reread your letter for any possible misinterpretation, and never use sarcasm or comments in poor taste. As the most formal of business communication, polite language, such as please and thank you, are most often used within a letter. While its use doesn't need to be excessive, when the situation calls for it, make sure to use these phrases. Grammar, spelling, and proofreading are essential in a business letter. Especially in this form of communication, misspellings or grammar mistakes stick out, and they signify poor attention to detail, and they lessen the importance of the message. The business letter is a fantastic tool for sending information of increased importance or formality. Knowing the proper structure of a letter and its different parts helps you to increase the image of formality. Within a business letter, there are several elements which, when used properly, convey a level of professionalism, formality, and importance. Let's talk about the different parts of a professional letter. How could this letter's format be improved? In this example, there are several key elements missing. In standard letter formats, you always begin with the sender's name and address in the top left of the letter. This allows the recipient to easily see who the letter's from and where to send a reply if one's needed. Below that should be a date. Since a letter's delivery time can vary, and a letter is often used as a permanent written record of communication, a date lets the receiver know when the letter was sent and helps when referring back to it at a later date. Before the greeting line, the standard formality is to list the receiver's name and address. This field has become more optional with modern-day letter writing. You may list the person's full name and address, or only their name, title, and department, or you may skip this field altogether and just leave a larger space before the greeting. The greeting of a letter can take many forms. In this more formal letter example, the greeting should end with a colon rather than a comma, like this. The comma is used for a more social letter, including thank you, sympathy cards, and other casual personal correspondence. Since the sender probably does not know the recipient on a very personal level, the use of the title Mrs. and the last name is appropriate. If you have a more personal relationship with the receiver, such as a longtime client, a coworker, or a friend, you may choose to use only the first name, such as Dear Jane. Always use the title Ms. rather than Miss or Mrs. if you don't know a woman's preferred salutation. If you're not sure of a person's gender, use either the full first name or initials rather than a title, such as Dear S.K. Smith. When a name's not known, then you can use to whom it may concern, or it's often more personal to use their title instead, such as Dear Vice President of Membership. Certain titles are always abbreviated, such as Mr., Ms., and Mrs., as well as Doctor. Other than that, most other titles are written out in full, such as Professor, Governor, or Pastor. The subject line is an optional summary of the topic of the letter. It goes between the greeting and body, and it would begin with the word subject and a colon. Within a business letter, you should try to get to the point quickly, but you have a little more leeway for polite filler than you do in most other forms. In order to help people easily skim to see what information or action is needed by you, just like in an email, list the call to action within the first sentence of your letter, or use a subject line. Use paragraphs and spacing in order to make the letter easy to skim. Each separate thought should be in a new paragraph, with an extra line between each. Also, be specific. Include all information and descriptions to easily identify the subject. For example, in our sample, we mentioned the account as past due and to remit payment. To be more effective and respect the reader's time, include what payments are past due, as well as how much to remit. In this sample, our letter is written in a non-standard font. This reduces the formality of the letter, and it conveys a lack of business etiquette. The more common serif fonts, such as Times New Roman, in 10 or 12-point font size, are preferred for business correspondence. Using a serif font, meaning a font which has the small lines at the end of the characters like this, is easier to read on paper. For a more modern feel, it's acceptable to use a standard sans serif such as Arial. Just avoid using overly decorative or specialized fonts like these. In business letters, they're perceived as unprofessional and are more difficult to quickly read. A business letter's format can be in standard or modified block, also called indented. Standard block looks like this. The margins are 1 inch on all sides, and there are no indentations within the text. Everything is also left justified. Modified block, or indented format, looks like this. It's similar to block with 1 inch margins, only the date and signature begin in the middle of the page, and the first line of each paragraph in the body is indented. The closing of a letter depends on the relationship to the recipient and the context of the letter. For example, if you have a more personal relationship, it's appropriate to add a final sentence before the official closing that's personal in nature, such as give my best to Nancy. With a personal relationship, the closings of best wishes or regards are appropriate. The official closing line for general business purposes can be the standard sincerely or yours truly. Avoid closing with a presumptive phrase, such as thank you in advance. This can be poorly received. Also, the closing respectfully is probably too formal for most general business purposes. and it's better used in a letter to a much higher status role. Skip 3 to 4 lines after the closing and print the name of the signer. Since many signatures are hard to read, this shows a respect for the reader in making it easier to quickly read the name. Sometimes you may need to use some additional information about the context of the letter. When you see initials typed 2 lines below the printed name, this indicates that the letter was typed by another party. This is a formality that's rarely used in modern business writing. Another notation you may see below the signature block is enclosure, ENC or ENCL, sometimes accompanied by a number, such as enclosures, parentheses 3. This indicates that additional information was enclosed with the letter and how many pieces were included. If items are sent separately, you may see the words separate mailing or under separate cover and the document description. The letters CC or the text copies to with a list of names in alphabetical order indicates that a copy of this letter was also sent to the listed parties. After looking at all of these elements and applying them to our sample, here's a better format for our letter. A handwritten letter or special note can convey a special level of concern or add a personal touch, unlike any other. Sometimes the most difficult communications to write are the more informal handwritten notes of thanks or sympathy. Knowing the right thing to say and the best way to deliver these messages is the key to making it as effective as possible. When writing more personal business letters or cards, such as greeting cards, thank you notes, or sympathy cards, it's usually best to handwrite them. Handwriting your message makes it more personal and shows a higher level of respect and caring for the recipient. Keep your message simple. You don't need to write a long message for it to be effective. Using simple and heartfelt language is much more important. And always sign both your first and last name, especially with sympathy cards or other occasions where the recipient is likely to receive many cards. Signing your last name can ensure they can easily tell who the card's from. Here are some special guidelines and ideas for messages in specific types of personal cards. For sympathy cards, avoid mentioning any religious references unless you know with certainty the beliefs of both the deceased and the receiver. Also, avoid phrases such as, "I know how you feel," "they're in a better place," or "you'll feel better in time." Depending on where the recipient is in the grieving process, these phrases, while they may be well-intentioned, could bring up negative reactions instead. Also, avoid the general, "call me if you need anything." A more appropriate offer of help would be for a specific and appropriate way you or your business can assist. Send a sympathy card as soon as you hear of the death, and if you don't know the family but only knew the deceased, you can address the card to the closest family member. This is usually the widow or widower or the eldest child. Keep the message simple. If you knew the deceased well, you can include a fond memory of them with your message. Here are a few ideas for general sympathy messages. I used the name John as an example. I'm very sorry to hear of your loss. You're in my thoughts during this difficult time. John will always be in our hearts. There are no words to tell you how sorry I am. Please know that you're in our thoughts. I was very sad to hear of John's death. He was always so kind and his smile lit up any room. If I can help you by picking up groceries or running errands, please let me know. You're in my thoughts. John brought so much joy to all of us every day. He'll be truly missed. Thank you cards are being sent less frequently these days. As a business person, you can stand out from the competition and gain a positive image with this simple act of gratitude. A handwritten thank you may not be required, but it's best to err on the side of formality rather than possibly offend someone by failing to send one. To be most effective, make sure to send a thank you card immediately after the event. Writing and mailing the card by the end of the next day is preferred. Be specific what you're thankful for. If it's a gift, mention what the gift was and how it will impact you. If the thank you is following a business transaction, mention a positive moment from the meeting or a personal note. Begin with the recipient's first name and end with a polite closing, such as sincerely or best regards. Here are some examples of appropriate thank you messages. Thank you so much for all of your hard work as we organized your home yesterday. It was such an honor to hear your touching stories about your mother and see the beautiful photos you kept of her. Thank you for sharing that with me. Thank you so much for the beautiful coffee mug. I'll begin each morning with a smile as I make my coffee. I really appreciate the donation you made for the Children's Fund Banquet. Your generosity will help us reach our goal to educate more children this year than ever before. You've truly made a difference. Knowing the right thing to say and the right way to say it can set you apart from the competition and show you really care. In business today, every opportunity to add a personal touch and show a more intimate side is the chance to be remembered. Make sure to write personal cards and notes whenever possible. Even a quick thinking of you card can set you apart from the competition. Most of us have experienced the bad feeling that comes with a poorly conducted phone call. Unlike the written communication forms, phone has the added elements of tone of voice, background noise, and wait times. To ensure your calls convey the right message, here are some of the basic etiquette practices to know. On the phone, the first message your caller receives comes from your tone of voice. This occurs the second you answer the call. For example, what does this greeting convey?
Thank you for calling Two Trees Olive Oil. This is Nancy. How can I help you?
The tone of voice Nancy used when she answered this call may give the impression that the caller is interrupting her from something more important, annoying her, or the call's otherwise unwanted. She spoke very quickly, and her voice stayed in a lower register with little variation. So how could we fix this to make the caller feel more welcome? First, when you answer a call, before picking up the phone, pause, take a breath, and smile. Although the caller can't see your face, when you smile, your voice tends to raise to a higher register and gain more variety of tone. One popular phone technique is to keep a mirror at your desk so you can make sure you smile as you talk. Second, slow down when you speak and enunciate. When you take your time, not only can the caller understand you better, but it also implies that you're making time for them and that they're the most important person at that moment. Here's the same greeting, but slower and with a smile.
Thank you for calling Two Trees Olive Oil. This is Nancy. How can I help you?
Much more welcoming. The content of the greeting is also important. Notice that not only did Nancy use the company name, but also her own name, and that's great. Always identify yourself when answering the phone. This puts the caller at ease, and it makes it more personal. The additional "How can I help you?" conveys that you're interested in assisting the caller. Once you've greeted the caller, refer to them by name. If they don't introduce themselves, it's okay to ask with a question, such as, "May I ask who I'm speaking to?" If you know the person on a more personal level, or if they only tell you their first name, it's okay to refer to them by their first name only. Otherwise, use the more formal Mr., Mrs., or Ms. titles until given permission otherwise. If they have a distinguishing title, such as doctor or judge, use that title throughout the conversation. Also, using a person's name adds a personal touch, but be careful. Don't use it too often or you may sound insincere. When answering a call, try to answer within 3 rings. Often when you hear the 3rd ring, the caller is actually hearing their 4th ring. If the call rings too many times before you answer, they may start to feel anxious that their call won't be answered. Now, when you're the caller, make sure to follow the same etiquette and pause, take a breath, and smile before dialing. When the call's answered, introduce yourself right away. If you don't introduce yourself first, the receiver may not be focused on what you're saying as much. They may be wondering if you're a solicitor or an unwanted caller. By introducing yourself first, you put them at ease and they can relax and listen to what you have to say. Also, as a caller, be brief. If your call may last more than a minute or two, a respectful question to ask is this a good time for you to talk? This allows the receiver to prepare for a longer call, and if it's not a good time for them, they can give you a better one. Finally, when ending a call, it's polite to thank the person for their time. You can also repeat any action items that were agreed upon during the call. For example, "Thank you, Sarah, for taking the time to talk with me. I'll email you that invoice before the end of the day." Knowing how to create a phone call that's welcoming, productive, and efficient will convey that the caller is important to you and that their needs will be met. If you make a habit of this, you may find that your calls are answered and returned faster because the person knows they'll have a good experience. Voicemail is a common business tool, and you most likely encounter it on a regular basis. Leaving the right message can make the difference between a fast return call and long delays. There are a number of etiquette standards to know about leaving a voicemail message to increase your chances of getting the response you want and to convey the right level of respect. How could we improve this voicemail message?
This is Nancy. You can call me at 321-328-8793. Thanks.
A message like our example will likely be placed at the bottom of the list of calls to return. But there are several ways we can improve the message to increase our call's priority and to show the receiver that we respect them and their time. First, before you call anyone, know what you want to say if you reach a voicemail. There's a high probability that many of your calls will be sent to a voicemail system, so knowing what to say ahead of time increases the effectiveness of your message. When leaving a message, make sure you speak clearly and slowly. If the receiver can't understand you, they may not be able to return your call. Also, just like any other phone call, pause, take a breath, and smile. The tone of your voice will reflect a more positive mood and attitude. Make sure you include all of the most important information twice. The most important information is both your first and last name, as well as your phone number. Begin your message with your full name. If you haven't spoken to them before, tell them how they know you or how you found out about them, and then leave your phone number slowly and clearly. After your message, repeat your full name and phone number again. Too often, people rush through the phone number, and the receiver has to listen to the voicemail one or more times to gather the information needed to return the call. Keep your message short. While our message was a little bit too short because it left out some vital information, a long, rambling message gives the receiver the impression that when they return your call, it'll probably be a long conversation. That means they'll most likely put off returning your call until they have a longer period of time to talk, which may not be until later in their day. Within your message, make sure to tell the receiver why you're calling. A generic "call me" message leaves the subject of the call a mystery, and it puts people ill at ease, not able to prepare for the call. Simply stating briefly what you would like to talk with them about can help them prepare. Use please and thank you as well. Shortened phrases like thanks are appropriate only for very close friends and family. If in doubt, always choose the more formal thank you to end the call. Most of us have been in the seemingly endless game of phone tag, where both parties leave message after message for each other. If your schedule is one where you have limited availability to accept a return call, you can also increase the likeliness of connecting by including the best times to reach you. Let's adjust our example. A better message for this situation may sound something like this.
Good morning. This is Nancy Smith. My number is 321-328-8793. I found your information through your website, and I'd like to talk to you about scheduling a home organizing session. You can reach me after 5 p.m. today or tomorrow between 10 and 2. Again, my name is Nancy Smith, and my number is 321-328-8793. Thank you.
As you can hear, the second message is much more welcoming. The receiver knows what the subject of the call will be, and they have more than one opportunity to write down the caller's name and phone number. They also know they'll most likely reach Nancy at the time she listed. This message is more likely to be returned promptly and during the preferred times. It also conveys that you have respect for their time, are prepared to clearly discuss your needs, and it'll most likely be a pleasant and productive call. If you don't receive a return call within 48 hours, feel free to leave a second message, and make sure to use the same etiquette practices as mentioned earlier. Never try to imply guilt or negative emotions. Simply continue with a polite and clear message, assuming there is a problem on the receiver's end that kept them from being able to return your call. Proper voicemail etiquette will portray a much more confident and professional image before you've ever even spoken to the person on the phone. Much like the etiquette of leaving a proper voicemail message, how you record your own greeting in your voicemail system can greatly influence your business image. Your voicemail greeting is a direct reflection of you, and it may be the first impression your clients receive. There have been many times when business has been won or lost based simply on a voicemail greeting. For example, How do you think this greeting makes a caller feel?
Thank you for calling 2 Trees Olive Oil. We are not able to take your call right now, but your call is important to us. Did you know you can communicate with us online? You can find us on the web at twotreesoliveoil.com. Please listen carefully because our menu options have changed. To speak to our marketing department, press 1. To speak to our finance department, press 2. To speak to our legal department, press 3. To speak to our retail department, press 4. To leave a general voicemail, press 5. Thank you and have a good day.
This message leaves the caller with a very cold, impersonal feeling. In general, unless it's absolutely necessary, a phone tree should not be used. The message you're sending your caller is that they're one in a large number of callers and that their concerns are not very important. If a phone tree is necessary, try to make sure there are no more than 3 choices at the first level, one of which is the option to speak to a live person. If there is a second level of options within the system, make sure there are also no more than 3 options, with a live person being one of them. And place the most common choice first in the list. If most of your callers want to speak to the retail department, make sure that's the first option they hear. This example is also extremely long. The longer a caller has to wait for your message to finish, the more frustrated they can become. Finally, avoid the cliché phrases such as, "Your call is important to us," or "The menu options have changed." These have been so overused that they convey the opposite emotions in your caller. If their call was truly important, someone would have been there to answer the call, not a recording. Here's another example without a phone tree. How does this compare to what you know about greetings?
Hi, I'm out of the office today because my daughter's sick home from school. Please leave a message and I'll get back to you at my earliest convenience.
Again, this message does not convey any warmth or caring. One quick fix for this message is to pause, breathe, and smile before recording it. Also, there's way too much personal information in this greeting. The caller does not need to know the reason why you're out of the office. They need to know how they can get their needs fulfilled and when to expect a return call. This message can be made warmer and more effective by creating a happier tone, making sure to list the full name and department or company of the person checking this voicemail, and providing information that's useful to the caller. Let's look at a message that will convey a more professional image and place the caller at ease, knowing they'll most likely get a return call that can help them.
Hello, you've reached Nancy Smith with 2 Trees Olive Oil. I'm sorry I missed your call. I'm out of the office today, Thursday, April 3rd, with no access to my voicemail. If this is an urgent matter, you can reach my assistant, Katie Brown, at 321-328-8793. Otherwise, I will return your call first thing Friday morning when I return. Thank you for your patience.
This new message sets the expectations of when they can expect a return call, how to get help if their matter's more urgent, and it sounds welcoming, like you're speaking directly to only that one caller. Also, with the full name and company stated in the message, the caller does not have to wonder if they reached the right person's voicemail. Leaving a proper voicemail greeting can help you give a first impression of competence and professionalism that will set the tone for your future conversations. As with all communication styles, there are a number of do's and don'ts with phone etiquette that will set the tone for your future conversations. Each country and region has a different etiquette style, but here are some of the basics within the United States. Knowing these standards will help you show respect and professionalism for the person on the other end of the line. When making or answering a call, make sure you're in an appropriate place to talk on the phone. With cell phones available wherever we are, common etiquette to those around you is just as important as how you treat the caller on the other end of the line. Places such as bookstores, restaurants, coffee shops, public bathrooms, in line with other people, or in places where other people go to work, relax, or concentrate are inappropriate for phone calls. It's best to silence your phone or set it to vibrate in these locations to respect the people around you. If you need to take a call, quickly and quietly excuse yourself and go outside or to a more appropriate area before you answer the phone. Keep your voice lowered and respectful. The people around you should not hear your conversation. And never hold a conversation on the phone when you're also talking with someone face-to-face. For example, don't talk on the phone while going through the checkout line at a store. This comes across as insulting or rude to the person trying to assist you, and the person on the other end of the phone is not receiving your full attention. And always give the person on the phone your full attention. Although you might not realize it, multitasking or distractions while you talk come across in your voice. You'll seem less focused, and you may come across as uninterested in what the other person's needs are. For example, can you tell when this person became distracted in the call?
Thank you, James. I'll get you the invoice tomorrow, first thing. It was nice talking to you, and I'll talk to you later, okay?
When the focus shifted, the vocal tone changed. If you can't dedicate your full attention, call the person back when you can. Some distractions are even more obvious because you can hear background noise as well. For example, don't type on a keyboard while on the phone. Never eat during a call. And don't talk with other people in the room. Also, be aware of background noise from your surroundings. If you're in a car, roll up the windows. Remove yourself from loud situations. Turn off the TV or radio in the background. And make sure children and pets can't be overheard. While excess noise can be distracting, a long silence can put a caller on edge as well. If you need to put the caller on mute for a moment, or you need a quiet moment to think before responding, let them know beforehand. A long silence without explanation can leave the caller wondering if the connection was lost or if you're distracted. A simple phrase such as, "Just a moment, I want to think this through before I respond," or, "Can you hold one moment while I ask my colleague?" will let the caller know why there's silence and put them at ease. When on a call, remember that there could be someone else listening to a conversation without your knowledge. A phone call should also be treated like a permanent record. If you wouldn't write it in a letter, you probably should not say it on a phone call. Save any delicate information for a face-to-face conversation whenever possible. The phone is one of the most common business tools we have. We take our phones with us everywhere we go, so learning to use it effectively and professionally is essential. Proper phone etiquette tells the caller you're interested in them, that they're important, and that you're ready and willing to help them. Using these guidelines, your phone conversations will most likely result in better relationships in business and get you the results you want. Your written and phone communications are often the first impression you give to a client, prospect, or colleague. It sets the tone for the relationship, and starting off on the wrong foot can mean a lot of extra work to recover from that initial bad impression. Knowing the proper etiquette in each of the main forms of business communication allows you to customize your message so it's well received and personalized for your specific situation. Remember, within all written communication, tone can be interpreted in different ways, depending on the reader. Make sure to proofread for possible interpretations as well as for grammar and errors. Also, written communication serves as a permanent record. Avoid any conversations that may lead to legal or HR problems, or which could reflect poorly on you or your business if read out of context or by the wrong person. Creating a message with warmth, professionalism, and a respect for the receiver will benefit both parties. Keep these etiquette standards in mind, not only so you can strictly follow them in all situations, but so you can choose when to bend or break the rules and when to adhere to them. These etiquette practices are based only on common standards within the United States. If your communications involve people either in or from other countries, make sure to research the basic etiquette for that area. The receiver will appreciate the extra effort you put forth and the respect it shows. I hope you've enjoyed this course on communication etiquette, and that it helps you build stronger, more beneficial relationships in all of your business dealings.